Beautiful people, please consider subscribing to support our channel. Help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers.
Zalvaran straightened. His gaze, locking onto Ryan Cole, lay motionless beneath the shattered remains of a steel support beam. His rifle nestled against his shoulder, his breathing slow and steady. The wind howled through the ruins of Terran, Colony 47, carrying the acrid scent of charred metal and death. Through the scope of his M95 Gauss rifle, he tracked the shifting formations of Jarek shock troopers, Ikuri, watching as the towering warriors adjusted their tactics in the wake of their losses. They were learning. That wasn't good. Ryan's finger hovered over the trigger as he studied the alien commander, a figure distinct from the rest, larger, more composed. Unlike the others who moved with conditioned precision, this one moved with intent, deliberation. This one wasn't rattled. He was hunting. Ryan exhaled slowly, lowering his heartbeat as he settled into complete stillness. He had spent years perfecting this craft, years embracing the patience that turned men into ghosts. Every fiber of his being rejected the primitive notion of direct confrontation. His war was not waged with brute force but with precision, with control over the battlefield that his enemies would never recognize until it was too late. He watched as the alien commander raised a fist, signaling his troops into cover. They weren't advancing blindly anymore. They weren't making the mistakes of their predecessors. That was a problem. Ryan adjusted his aim. One shot, one kill. The Gauss rifle thrummed softly as a round exited the chamber at hypersonic speed. The targeted soldier never saw it coming. His massive frame jerked backward, his armor failing against the pinpoint force of the projectile. Another body hit the dirt. They didn't panic. Ryan frowned. They should have. The enemy commander turned, scanning the ruins, his dual-pupiled eyes locking on to the Exactius building Ryan occupied. Impossible. Ryan shifted, carefully relocating, behind a new outcropping of debris. He had seen trained fighters before, had faced enemies that claimed superiority, but he had never encountered anything that adapted this quickly. This wasn't just a commander. This was a predator. A low vibration hummed through the wreckage beneath him, subtle but distinct, a trap. Ryan launched himself sideways an instant before the explosion ripped through the ruins, a concussive blast that sent shrapnel tearing through the air. He hit the ground hard, rolling into a crouch behind a toppled transport vehicle. His head was still ringing when he caught movement to his left. The commander was already advancing. Ryan's instincts kicked in before his mind caught up. He fired 2 quick shots and repositioned, vanishing into the rubble before the alien could counter. His heart pounded, but his mind remained clear. This isn't like the others. This one is hunting you too. He could hear the heavy footfalls, moving in tandem with his own, each calculated shift of weight mirroring his evasions. The alien's reflexes were razor-sharp, his ability to read the battlefield eerily precise. There was no hesitation in his pursuit, no reckless charge. Ryan had never felt hunted before. A flicker of movement. Too late. The force of the impact sent Ryan sprawling. His rifle skittered across the ground as he crashed into a slab of collapsed concrete. His vision blurred, but he reacted on instinct, rolling just as a massive armored fist pulverized the ground where his skull had been. Ryan twisted, drawing his sidearm. The first shot glanced off the alien's armor. The second found Stewart at a weak point beneath the plating, forcing the behemoth back a step. Ryan with something almost resembling approval. "You are not like the others," the alien rumbled. Ryan didn't waste breath on conversation. He fired again, but the alien was already moving. Fast. Too fast. Ryan pivoted, using the ruins to his advantage, twisting into a tight passageway where the creature's size would work against him. He needed space, distance, time. He didn't get it. Zalvaran anticipated his escape. The alien leapt, intercepting Ryan before he could reach cover. A hand like a vice closed around his throat, hoisting him effortlessly off the ground. Ryan didn't struggle. He'd been in enough fights to know that panic got you killed. Instead, he acted. His free hand pulled the combat knife from his belt and drove it into the alien's exposed side. Zalvaran grunted, his grip loosening just enough for Ryan to twist free, dropping to the ground and rolling into a ready stance. His mind was already calculating, already analyzing the smallest hesitations, Curtis, in his enemy's movements. The alien exhaled, his expression unreadable. "You wound me, human," he said, his voice steady despite the trickle of dark blood seeping from his side. Ryan leveled his pistol, ignoring the sting in his ribs. "You'll live." Zalvaran's mandibles flexed. For now, they circled each other. Two predators, locked in the first moment of true recognition. The first acknowledgement that this fight was something different, something neither of them had encountered before. The corridor stretched ahead, its walls pulsing with faint bioluminescence. The air carried a synthetic tang, laced with the metallic bite of something unnatural. Kane moved first, his rifle steady, eyes scanning for any shift in shadow. Behind him, the team followed in practiced formation. Silent, precise, lethal. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled. There was no room for mistakes. The breach had gone unnoticed so far, but the deeper they pushed, the thinner the margin of error became. The Vraxis weren't complacent, they were predators, and sooner or later they'd sense intruders in their den. Vasquez's voice was a whisper in Kane's ear. "Command center is straight ahead, 3 levels up, closest. Access point is an elevator shaft, but it's got a security lock. Give me 90 seconds and I can override." 60, Kane muttered. They reached an intersection, stopping just before the edge. Kane peered around the corner. 2 guards, tall, armored in dark exoskeletal plating, their elongated skulls pulsing faintly beneath their helmets. Vraxis, warriors. Their mandibles twitched as they exchanged guttural clicks, oblivious to the team's presence. Kane signaled. Hawk moved first. A single shot, suppressed and precise, punched through the first alien's skull, dropping it instantly. The second barely had time to react before Bishop closed the distance, his combat knife sliding between the creature's mandibles. A sharp twist, a low gurgle, then silence. Briggs was already dragging the bodies into the shadows when Vasquez moved toward the security panel beside the elevator shaft. His fingers danced over the alien interface, eyes flickering across the glowing symbols. "Come on," he muttered, frustration creeping into his voice. "This language is like trying to read static." Kane kept his rifle trained on the corridor. He could feel it now. The ship was waking up. A low tremor vibrated through the walls. Faint, almost imperceptible, but enough. "Vasquez," Kane pressed. "Almost there." Another tremor, stronger. A shift in the air, a change in the hum of the ship's systems. Then the lights changed. A deep crimson glow flooded the hallway, and a shrill alien wail pierced the air. Vasquez cursed. "Damn it! They just triggered a proximity scan. Security's inbound." Kane spun toward the elevator shaft. "We're moving, now." Vasquez gave the console a final slap, and the doors hissed open. Inside, the shaft stretched into darkness, a series of maintenance rungs lining its interior. Kane gestured, and one by one the team slipped inside. The moment the last man cleared the doorway, Kane hit the panel. The doors snapped shut just as heavy footfalls echoed down the corridor. "Climb," Kane ordered. They ascended quickly, boots finding purchase on the slick metal rungs. Below, a muffled thud, then the screech of claws against steel. Something was trying to pry the doors open. Halfway up, Briggs grunted. "We're not alone in here." Kane looked up. A faint shimmer in the dark. Then it moved, a Varaxis sentry drone. Suspended in the shaft, its segmented body twisting unnaturally. No sound, no warning, just the dull gleam of its serrated limbs unfolding. Hawk didn't hesitate. His rifle snapped up, a single shot blasting through the drone's sensory cluster. It convulsed, a burst of green fluid misting the air, then tumbled past them into the black below, a metallic crash. Then silence. They climbed faster. At the top, Vasquez worked quickly, overriding the next hatch. Kane could hear the distant pounding of boots below. More warriors were coming. The ship was fully aware of them now. The hatch released with a hiss. One by one, the team climbed through, emerging into a darkened corridor. Ahead, a sprawling chamber loomed, its walls pulsing with faint organic light. Strange, translucent conduits lined the ceiling, coursing with liquid the color of dying embers. It wasn't just a command center, it was something else. Briggs exhaled. What the hell is this place? Vasquez swept his scanner over the walls, the readout flickering with unreadable data. "This isn't just a bridge," he murmured. "It's part of the ship's nervous system. This whole place is alive." Kane moved forward, rifle raised. He could feel it too, a presence, something just beyond the edge of comprehension. A hum that wasn't just machinery. A warning. Then the wall shifted. A mass of black and silver erupted. From the far side of the room. Not an officer, not a standard warrior. This one was different, taller, bulkier. Its armor was reinforced, its mandibles lined with rows of needle-like teeth. A Varaxis enforcer. It moved faster than anything its size should have been capable of. Kane fired first. A burst of plasma rounds struck its chest, but the armor absorbed the impact with sickening ease. The creature lunged, closing the distance in a blink. Briggs was already moving, his heavy weapon spinning up. The moment the enforcer landed, Briggs unleashed a volley of high-impact rounds, the force slamming the alien back against the wall. It staggered, but didn't fall. Then it roared. The walls vibrated, and from the far side of the chamber more figures emerged. Not just warriors. Not just guards, elite Varaxis soldiers. Bishop exhaled, flipping his combat knife in one hand. "Guess we finally got their attention." Kane reloaded. "Then let's make sure they remember why they should have left us alone." The battle erupted in an instant. Hawk dropped 2 soldiers before they could fully materialize from the shadows, his sniper rifle humming with suppressed efficiency. Briggs laid down a storm of heavy fire, sending kinetic rounds tearing through anything that moved. Vasquez ducked behind cover, working frantically at his wrist console, trying to break into the ship's control systems. The enforcer charged again. Kane rolled aside at the last second, its claws raking the floor where he'd been standing. He came up firing, each shot aimed for weak points, joints, exposed synth flesh, anything that wasn't covered in armor. Bishop moved with deadly efficiency, a blur of steel and motion. He slipped past one soldier's guard, his knife finding the gap between plates. The alien convulsed, black ichor spraying from the wound, but Bishop was already on to the next. Briggs grunted as an energy bolt grazed his shoulder, the heat searing through his armor. He snarled, swung his weapon around, and fired a full auto, burst into the warrior that had shot him. The alien's torso exploded in a spray of biometal and flesh. Vasquez's voice cut through the chaos. "I've got access. I can reroute power, lock down the security grid, maybe even crash their comms." Kane shot another warrior through the throat, then ducked behind a console. "Do it." The enforcer was back on its feet, eyes burning with something beyond rage. It charged again, this time straight for Vasquez. Hawk saw it first. "Vasquez, move!" Too late. The enforcer slammed into him, sending Vasquez sprawling. The alien raised a clawed hand for the killing blow, then its head snapped back, a single, round punching through its skull. Hawk lowered his rifle. "Sit down." The enforcer crashed to the ground, motionless. Vasquez groaned, pushing himself up. "That sucked." Briggs grinned. "You're welcome." A deep rumble shook the chamber. The walls flickered, the bioluminescent veins dimming. Vasquez looked at his wrist console, eyes widening. "I just tripped something," he muttered. "A fail-safe." Kane frowned. "What kind of fail-safe?" The ship answered for him. A new alarm blared, louder, deeper. Briggs's grin faded. "I don't like that sound." Vasquez's fingers danced over his console, face tightening. "They're rerouting power, shutting down non-essential systems. Everything's going dark except the command deck and—" A pause. Bishop adjusted. His grip on his knife. "And what?" Vasquez swallowed. "And weapons control." Kane met his gaze. "They're preparing to fire." Vasquez nodded. At Earth, the chamber shook again. The ship was coming alive. Kane reloaded, jaw set. "Then we shut it down." The deck trembled beneath their boots, a deep, pulsing vibration that wasn't just mechanical. The Kara, Thule, was responding to them now, not as a ship, but as a living thing, an organism rejecting an infection. The walls dimmed, their eerie bioluminescence flickering as the ship rerouted power. Kane didn't hesitate. "Vasquez, what are we dealing with?" The tech specialist's fingers danced across his wrist console, eyes flicking over streams of alien data. "They've locked us out of critical systems, but I managed to intercept a command sequence before they shut the door." He exhaled, forcing his voice steady. "They're priming the main weapons array, targeting Earth." Briggs scoffed. "Of course they are." He slammed a fresh magazine into his rifle. "Can't beat us on the ground, so they try to wipe the board." Bishop spun his combat knife in one hand, watching the walls like they might move. "We stop it here." Kane nodded. "Where's the weapons control?" Vasquez swiped through. The data then froze. "That's the problem. The main firing system isn't on this deck. It's housed in a separate core chamber, 3 levels down." Hawk exhaled. "Figures." Briggs flexed his fingers. "Tell me you have a way to get us there." Vasquez's hesitation was brief, but Kane caught it. "I can get us in," Vasquez admitted. "But I'll have to bypass the ship's failsafe, and the moment I do, they'll know exactly where we are." Kane glanced at the team. No hesitation in their eyes. Just the same unwavering focus that had carried them through every impossible mission before. "Then we hit fast," Kane said. "No delays. We breach, shut it down, and get the hell out." Vasquez gave a curt nod and went to work. Sparks danced from the console as he forced a bypass, alien code unraveling in real time. The deck beneath them pulsed as if the ship itself was resisting. Then, with a sharp hiss, a section of the floor split apart. A vertical shaft descended into darkness, lined with thick, pulsing cables. Briggs eyed it warily. "That looks like a throat," Vasquez smirked. "Yeah, and we're jumping in." They moved fast. One by one, they descended, using rappelling lines to navigate the shaft's tight walls. The deeper they went, the warmer it became. The air thickened, tinged with something acrid. This wasn't just a ship, it was a war machine, and they were venturing straight into its heart. At the bottom, a narrow passage opened into a vast chamber. The walls pulsed with crimson veins of energy, feeding into a central structure, a massive, cylindrical core that radiated heat like an open furnace. Suspended conduits snaked from the ceiling, dripping with a viscous, bioluminescent fluid, the weapons control nexus. Kane barely had time to assess before movement flickered in the shadows. A ripple of shifting armor, the faint gleam of biosteel. Then they attacked. The Vraxis had been waiting. A burst of plasma fire erupted from the left, forcing the SEALs into cover. Kane ducked behind a twisted column, his rifle snapping up as he returned fire. The chamber ignited in chaos, streaks of red energy colliding with the sharp crack of human gunfire. Hawk dropped one target instantly, a clean shot through the skull, but more emerged, their movements eerily fluid, bounding between structures with inhuman agility. Bishop lunged from cover, his blade flashing in the dim glow. He met the first warrior mid-charge, twisting past its strike before driving his knife into the exposed joint of its armor. The alien let out a strangled hiss before collapsing. Briggs unleashed a wall of suppressive fire, forcing the remaining soldiers back. "Vasquez, whatever you're doing, do it faster." The tech specialist was already moving, sprinting toward the control core. "Cover me." Kane fired in short, controlled bursts, keeping the Vraxis at bay as Vasquez slid into Ituan position. The moment his hands met the console, the chamber itself seemed to react. Lights flickering, conduits pulsing erratically. The ship knew. Vasquez gritted his teeth. "I'm inside the system, but it's fighting me. These things don't just use code, they think. This isn't an override, it's a battle." Hawk dropped another target. Then win it. Vasquez's fingers blurred over his console. The ship groaned, a deep, reverberating noise that sent a shiver down Kane's spine. Then Vasquez's eyes widened. "Oh, hell." Kane didn't like that tone. "What?" Vasquez's voice was tight. "They're rerouting power to manual control." He pointed toward the far end of the chamber, toward a massive, armored figure standing before a secondary console. Not just another warrior, an overseer. 7 feet tall, plated in thick biometal, its mandibles twitching in something that resembled amusement. It held no ranged weapon, only a pair of curved blades, each one pulsing with raw energy. Bishop exhaled. Great. A sword fight. The overseer moved faster than something that size should. It launched forward, closing the gap in a single bound. Briggs fired first, his rounds sparking against its armor. The overseer barely reacted, twisting through the hail of bullets like it was an afterthought. Then it was on them. A single, fluid motion. Its blade sliced toward Kane. He barely ducked in time, the energy edge sizzling past his head. Bishop lunged in response, his knife seeking flesh, but the overseer caught his wrist mid-strike and flung him across the chamber. Bishop crashed hard, rolling to a stop. He groaned but pushed himself up immediately, knife still in hand. "All right, that sucked." Hawk lined up a shot, but the overseer twisted at the last second, the bullet glancing harmlessly off its shoulder. Briggs growled. "This thing's fast." Kane adjusted his grip on his rifle, calculating. Bullets weren't working. Bishop's knife barely made a dent. They needed a different approach. Then he saw it. The conduits feeding into the walls, throbbing with energy, connected directly to the core. Kane made a decision. Vasquez hit the power surge. Now. Vasquez's hands moved like lightning. The chamber shuddered. A wave of raw energy pulsed outward, and for the briefest second the overseer hesitated. Its armor flickered, its connection to the ship momentarily disrupted. That was all Kane needed. He moved. Fast, closing the distance before the overseer could recover. He grabbed one of its own curved blades, twisting it free from its grip. The overseer roared, lashing out. Kane ducked low, drove the stolen blade up, straight into the exposed joint beneath its ribs. A sickening crunch. The overseer staggered, mandibles clicking in shock. Then it collapsed, unmoving. Silence. Kane exhaled, letting the blade drop. His hands were steady. His pulse wasn't. Vasquez's voice cut through the quiet. "Weapons array is offline." A pause. "Earth is safe." Briggs wiped sweat from his brow. "Then let's get the hell out of here." Hawk scanned the chamber warily. Something tells me they won't make that easy. Kane reloaded. They never do. The ship was dying. The Karathul trembled, its once fluid movements turning erratic as its systems collapsed. The chamber's pulsing veins dimmed to a sickly black, flickering with intermittent power surges. The floor beneath the SEAL team vibrated as distant explosions rippled through the flagship's hull. Kane could feel it. This wasn't just a ship-wide failure. This was a controlled burn. The Vraxis had initiated a self-destruct. Vasquez swore, his fingers blurring over his wrist console. They're purging everything. Total system collapse in under 4 minutes. Briggs spat blood and wiped his mouth. So what? You shut down their big gun, and they decide to blow the whole damn ship? Hawk reloaded with practiced ease. Sore losers. Bishop stretched his shoulder, still sore from his earlier impact against the wall. Then we'd better move. Kane's mind was already working through options, calculating exits. Their breach point was too far. The elevator shaft was compromised. Their only chance was an emergency exfil. If the USS Aegis was still in position, their pilot, Calloway, could extract them. He tapped his comm. Aegis, do you copy? A burst of static. Then Calloway's voice cut through, tight and focused. Copy, Bravo team, reading some serious instability on that ship. What the hell did you do? Shut down their primary weapons system. Kane paused as another tremor rocked the ship. And triggered a self-destruct. Calloway whistled. That'll do it. What's your exfil plan? Kane scanned their surroundings. We need a direct path to the outer hull. Can you get a lock on us? Negative. Whatever tech they're running is still screwing with my sensors. You'll have to punch your own exit. Briggs grinned despite the chaos. I like the sound of that. Vasquez pulled up a partial schematic. Hangar bays 40 meters south. Blast doors are still online, but I can force them open. Should lead straight to the void. Kane nodded. Then we move. They ran. The flagship's corridors twisted ahead, their once fluid glow now fading into darkness. The walls were slick with condensation, as if the ship was sweating in its death throes. Alarms blared, their alien frequencies jarring against human ears. The ship's gravity fluctuated in surges. 1 second, their boots felt like lead. The next, they were nearly weightless. They reached the final passageway, an elongated tunnel leading into the hangar. Kane took point, rifle raised. The doors loomed ahead, sealed shut. The air inside the chamber was dense, thrumming with a deep, unnatural hum. Vasquez sprinted to the control panel, already working. Give me 30 seconds. He didn't get them. The tunnel behind them darkened. A figure stepped through. Not a warrior. Not an overseer. Something worse. The Karathul had a captain, and he had come to kill them himself. The Vraxis High Commander was nearly 8 feet tall, his exoskeletal armor adorned with deep crimson streaks. Where the warriors had been fast, he was something else. Calm, deliberate, a predator that had never known fear. In one clawed hand, he carried a weapon unlike anything they'd seen before, a segmented staff that pulsed with shifting, liquid energy. His elongated skull tilted slightly as he studied them. Then he spoke, a guttural, multitonal voice. The universal translator in Kane's helmet barely kept up. You are unworthy. Kane fired first. A burst of high-impact rounds struck center mass, only to stop mid-air. The bullets hung for half a second before liquefying into black vapor. The commander raised his staff. A shockwave slammed into them. Kane felt himself lifted off his feet, thrown backward like a rag doll. He hit the deck hard, the impact knocking the breath from his lungs. Hawk recovered first. He lined up a sniper shot, aiming directly for the alien's skull. He squeezed the trigger. The round never landed. The commander twisted his staff, and the bullet veered off course, embedding harmlessly into the wall. Briggs let out a low growl. Okay, that's new. Bishop flipped his combat knife. Guess we do this the old-fashioned way. The commander moved first. He was fast. Not just fast, inhumanly fast. One moment he stood at the tunnel's edge, the next he was upon them. His staff lashed out in a blur, striking Briggs first. The SEAL barely had time to react before the weapon connected, sending him flying. Bishop closed in, weaving past the staff's arc. His knife found an opening. He drove it into the gap beneath the alien's ribs. The blade shattered. Bishop barely had time to process before the commander backhanded him across the hangar. Hawk took another shot. This time, the bullet stopped, inches from the commander's skull before disintegrating. Vasquez's voice crackled in Kane's ear. "Doors are open. Go!" Kane didn't hesitate. "Fall back, now!" Briggs and Bishop scrambled to their feet. Hawk fired one last round. Less to kill, more to distract. It worked. The commander turned, deflecting the bullet, just long enough for the team to sprint through the blast doors. They emerged into the hangar bay. The space was massive, designed to hold entire fleets of alien dropships. But the hangar was nearly empty. Only a few Vraxis vessels remained, locked in place. At the far end, a massive launch bay loomed, sealed by transparent force field. Beyond it, open space. Calloway's voice rang in Kane's ear. "I see you. Moving in for pickup." Kane turned back just in time to see the blast doors explode outward. The commander stepped through, his armor unmarred, his staff crackling with energy. He raised one hand. The force field flickered. Then it failed. Atmosphere ripped from the hangar. The decompression was instant. Anything not secured was gone. Kane felt the pull. His boots skidded against the floor, his fingers scrambling for grip. He slammed his hand against his belt, activating his maglock. The others did the same, except Vasquez. His boots lost. Purchase. The void pulled him toward open space. Kane moved. He reached, grabbing Vasquez's arm just as he cleared the edge. The strain burned through Kane's muscles, but he held tight. The commander watched them, unmoving. Then, slowly, deliberately, he stepped forward. Into the void. His body did not move. The vacuum should have ripped him away. Instead, he walked, as if gravity had no hold over him. The stars reflected in his armor, an unholy specter advancing with the slow inevitability of death itself. Kane felt the cold crawl up his spine. Then, a roar of engines. The USS Aegis streaked into view, its weapons locked on the hangar bay. Calloway's voice thundered over comms. "Get down!" A burst of high-explosive rounds tore through the hangar. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the ship. The commander vanished in a storm of fire. Kane hauled. Vasquez back inside just as the Aegis opened its docking ramp. Briggs, Bishop, and Hawk sprinted aboard. Kane was the last one in. The moment his boots hit the deck, the ramp sealed shut. Calloway didn't wait. The Aegis peeled away from the Kara Thule just as the flagship's hull imploded. A final, violent tremor shook the dying ship. Then it ceased. No explosion. No wreckage. The Kara Thule simply folded inward, vanishing into the abyss as if it had never been there at all. Silence filled the cabin. Briggs exhaled. "Jesus!" Bishop ran a hand through his hair. "I am never doing that again." Vasquez coughed. "You're assuming we live long enough to get another shot." Kane didn't speak. He just watched the void where the ship had been. Something told him they hadn't seen the last of the Vraxis, and that the war was far from over.